Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and goings on with the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and as always, I'm joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Good to see you, Damon.
You as well. And Jonathon Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
Beyond. Hey, Damon.
Hello. And after a really strong start to the year in terms of game releases, we had some really big games like Horizon Forbidden West, Elden Ring, Dying Light 2, Gran Turismo 7, and some really strong, smaller indie titles like Tunic and Sifu. We now find ourselves in a bit of a dry spell, and the forecast, it looks like it's going to stay the course for a while. I think we've run out of big releases until later in the year. Saints Row is in August. There's some smaller releases planned for the summer, like TMNT, Shredder's Revenge, and Sonic Origins. But I think the next big, really big AAA release, as of right now, is Saints Row in August. And in terms of first-party releases from both PlayStation and Xbox, it's pretty dry out there. Of course, Xbox has Starfield coming in November. And Ryan, I think that's a good place to start as we what I want to do is sort of look into our crystal balls and try to predict what the rest of the year might look like in terms of first party releases from both Xbox and PlayStation. Now, a year ago, it's been almost a year now since Bethesda, Xbox planted their flag in the sand, 11/11/2022 for Starfield. Ryan, any chance you think that release date slips into next year?
Oh, there's definitely a chance. We've seen it far too many times. We know game development is difficult, and it's not easy in the work from home situation. So there is certainly a more than reasonable chance it could slip. I mean, as you said, Damon, they planted their flag in the ground so early that I still don't believe them that it's going to be. And I say that with love. I want it to come out in November, but they said it so long ago. And we've seen with so many other games, it's a little tough to believe them, even still at this point in time in April. Now, I hopefully will get a real better indication of that sometime over the summer, whenever Microsoft and Bethesda have their Xbox showcase. But for now, I'm just hoping, but I'm still not super confident in it just yet.
Well, what else? Anything else that Microsoft might be able to get out by the end of the year?
Yeah, so taking a look through the first-party studios list, obviously there are a lot of them on the Xbox side now, and a number of these games are clearly still way out. Fable, Avowed, State of Decay 3, stuff like that. But just taking a reasonable look at what the first-party studios are up to and what games have been announced, I think there are 4 other games that could reasonably make it out this year. Will all of them make it out? Almost certainly not. I think we'll be lucky if 1 or maybe 2 of them makes it out, including Starfield. But I think those 4, besides Starfield, are Redfall. And I say that because that was announced at their showcase last summer for summer of 2022. In effect, in a few months from now, we haven't heard a thing about it. So I think we can reasonably throw that summer date out the window. Mm-hmm. But it could still make fall. It's seemingly going to be delayed, but could still make it out this year. And then you've got
Fall's right there in the name.
Exactly. And then you've got Hellblade 2. And that one, I say, because we've seen it a couple of times now. I mean, that last showcase, that last demo we got at the Game Awards was a fairly lengthy gameplay demo, something like 6 minutes long in engine. So that one feels like it could be the closest out of this group other than Starfield. So we'll see about that. And then the other couple I wanted to point out are Forza Motorsport, which is the next-gen only reboot of the more simulation-focused Forza franchise. Of course, we got Forza Horizon 5, IGN's Game of the Year for last year. But the different team, Turn 10, up in Seattle, is working on Forza Motorsport as a roundup reboot of the simulation series. That was announced at the Xbox Series X, that first showcase in summer of 2020. We're going on 2 years since we've really heard anything concrete about it. So I feel like that one could make the fall. Forza games traditionally come out in the fall. So if it doesn't hit this fall, I think that one will look pretty likely for 23. But in the meantime, I think there's a decent chance we might see that one. And then the final one on my Xbox list here, as far as the first party stuff goes, is from Machine Games on the Bethesda side, and Indiana Jones. Again, also released with just a CG teaser, or announced, pardon me, with the CG teaser. But Machine, like if you look at the timeline since they finished up Wolfenstein, it's a maybe. It's a decent maybe for this year. So I think there's 5 first-party titles, 5 exclusives for Xbox we might see. Will we realistically see all of them? No. Will we realistically see most of them this year? Probably not. But hopefully at least a couple of them.
Yeah, I think for me, Hellblade 2 seems fairly likely because this fall, I think we'll be coming up on 3 years since that game was announced.
Right.
Yeah, I think that one is probably, I guess, of those, just, my personal guess would be the most likely. I would love to see this Indiana Jones game from Machine Games. But Ryan, what's your what's this game even going to look or play like, since Machine Games has been doing first person shooters for so long?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. That's what's really intriguing about this, is that Machine has been doing first person stuff even before the core of Machine Games was formed out of Starbreeze, who, of course, put themselves on the map with the Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, another first-person game that was just sublime. So they're basically, that studio's entire track record is with first-person stuff. Do I think that they're going to make a first-person Indiana Jones game? No, I don't think they will. Would I love to see that, Damon? Yes, I would love to see a first-person Indiana Jones game with I guess he'd have his pistol, he'd have the whip you could swing around on and grab weapons and stuff. It'd be pretty cool to see, but I think I would bet on it being a third-person game, which kind of adds to the intrigue because, as you said, that studio hasn't done third-person. Do I think they can and would do it extremely well? Yes. Now, I guess the other caveat with Indiana Jones is that is being published through, or at least it's in partnership with Lucasfilm, who, and their resurrected gaming brand has been making all kinds of deals with just making fan dreams come true. I mean, they announced Return to Monkey Island with Ron Gilbert. Right. They own Monkey Island. I mean, it's crazy. They've got Star Wars Eclipse from Quantic Dream. They've got the PS5 exclusive of the KOTOR remake. So I think there is a very reasonable chance that as part of that deal, which could have been made prior to the Microsoft acquisition of Bethesda, that Indiana Jones could end up being a multi-platform game, but maybe not. Maybe it'll still end up. It just kind of depends, I guess, when, and how the deal was struck. But yeah, that one, I'm really curious to see more of it for sure.
Okay, so Jonathan, looking at PlayStation, it had a really strong start to the year with Horizon Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7, but now it finds itself without a release date for any of its upcoming first-party games. Of course, God of War Ragnarok is the big one that's supposed to come this year. How confident are you that God of War Ragnarok will actually be released by the end of 2022?
I think seeing God of War Ragnarok this year is almost a certainty. This past week was the 4th anniversary of God of War 2018, and Sony Santa Monica didn't show anything new from the game, but there was a message from Cory Barlog, who, though he's not directing Ragnarok, was obviously such a big face for 2018. And he mentioned how they're not quite yet ready to show the game again, but that they are really hard working on it. Their heads down. I think it's one of those things where they know how much pressure there is to deliver with the sequel. I think God of War 2018 is such a beloved game, and probably since the original Last of Us, up until God of War, was probably the most beloved PlayStation exclusive to a certain extent. And so I think there's a lot of eyes on this one to get it right. And I think they want to be able to show it in as finished a state as possible, because also they know how excited people are. I don't think they need to show, half finished early stuff or a vertical slice. They just want to be able to show the game for what the game is going to be. So I have no doubt pretty much that unless something major kind of comes up unexpectedly, it is most likely going to make it this year. I would maybe optimistically shoot for September-ish. That was a really successful time for Spider-Man for PlayStation. And they don't typically do a lot of things in the fall unless they're launching a console. So September feels like a good spot for that one. But I think it's almost a certainty. As for what else we might get this year, Sony's been very quiet on the first party side. Obviously, they rely a lot on third party exclusives. We'll have Forspoken in the fall, but with Horizon and Gran Turismo earlier this year and then God of War, I think they weren't looking to overdo it too much. But I do think there are some other potentials depending on where projects are, where teams are, the size of teams and things like that. And I think two of the most likely ones are things that haven't really officially been shown, but have either been reported on pretty heavily and concretely or been kind of talked about, but not officially said. And the first one of those would be the Last of Us remake that we heard via Bloomberg is somewhere in the works. I think last we heard was sort of at Naughty Dog. Depending on where that one is, we could potentially see that this year, but we could also see that pushed for whenever the Last of Us TV show is coming out. That might be some nice synergy, and I think that's set for 2023. But that is one potential. Another one is Naughty Dog's multiplayer project. They've been working on this one for a while. They've been talking about it for a while as a thing they've been working on, but we just don't have any specifics on it. The Last of Us Part 2 was originally announced to have a multiplayer component, but then they decided to push it away as they wanted to focus on the campaign and the story they were telling there. But they've continued to work on a multiplayer game and are continuing to push forward with that one. And given how great The Last of Us Factions was, and I think Uncharted multiplayer is, I think that's a really, really potentially exciting one that could go into the holidays. Like the holidays when a lot of people are off, that's a great time to kind of launch a new multiplayer game. And I think that's a very highly likely option. The last sort of possibility, and this is, of course, discounting any surprises Sony has in store that we just don't know about, but the other big question, I think, is PSVR 2. There have been some reports that said they were aiming for a fall 2022 launch, some that have said that they're now aiming for an early 2023 launch. But I think even if we don't see it this fall, we'll likely start to get a sense of what exclusives are coming other than Horizon Call of the Mountain for that one. And I think one of the likeliest candidates for that would be an Astrobot Rescue Mission sequel / Astro's Playroom sequel. Astrobot was, I think, one of the biggest flagship things for PSVR 1. Astro's Playroom was sort of the Wii Sports of the PS5. And I think having Astros again at the PSVR 2 would, one, again, solidify how important that character now is for PlayStation, but also, two, I think be a great showcase for what the new VR2 headset and controllers are meant to do. So those feel, I think, like the most likely. Again, there might be surprises. There's a lot of hope and rumors and constant speculation about what PlayStation is up to, but I think those are some of the most likely candidates.
Well, hopefully some of these games actually arrive this year. If I'm playing God of War Ragnarok and Starfield this fall, consider me a happy gamer. Before we go, we've got the results of last episode's poll. We asked you, which next-gen JRPG are you looking forward to the most? And the winner, despite us not having any idea when we're going to get to play this, is the second part of the Final Fantasy VII remake. That was followed closely by Final Fantasy XVI and then Kingdom Hearts 4. So lots of excitement out there for Square Enix's next-gen JRPGs. A poll for you to vote on for next week. Which of these games we were discussing this episode do you most hope arrives this year? Is it God of War Ragnarok, Last of Us Remake, Starfield? Make sure to vote at IGN.com and we'll share the results with you next week. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Ryan and Jonathan. Thank you to Alan working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. My name is Damon. We'll be back next Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern with more PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X news and goings-ons. We'll see you then.